Yo, what's up guys? How we doing? Moxsy here with another Borderlands 3 video, and as you can tell by the title and what you just watched, Gearbox has addressed issues with the recursion or fixes to the recursion not working as intended or whatever's going on. Fortunately for us, unfortunately for Gearbox, or whatever is going on with this whole situation, Gearbox doesn't actually understand why the recursion is working so well. So they nerfed how the recursion works with Indiscriminate, but that isn't what was making the recursion so good and so powerful and causing so many ricochets. And today for you guys, I'm going to be breaking down why the recursion works so well, what's causing it to do so much damage, and I'm going to give you an updated skill tree for the Ricochet Witch build. I've been playing this build for a long time. It's kind of taken over Borderlands. It's really, really awesome how many people love this build. And so updating it for you guys, telling you what's changed, what hasn't changed, and yeah, let's get right into it. Alright, so let's do some good old science. People who follow me on Twitch know that we do a lot of science there, and bringing some of that to YouTube. Well, we do a lot of science on YouTube too, but I'm going to show you how the recursion works right now. I have touched on this in other videos, but with the update to the Ricochet Witch build, I wanted to make sure that everyone understands what's going on. So right now, these are my points. No points into damage, just mindfulness. We don't have Indiscriminate. We're using a recursion with no bonus damage on action skill end. We'll put this away and put this away. We got a knife drain planetoid, so we're not gaining any bonuses from that. We got our spiritual driver and a transformer with no bonus action skill damage, and our recursion. So what happens when I shoot the recursion here? I'm gonna use a little photo mode to help us out here. So I shot the recursion, hit this enemy. That projectile is going to get sent and hit this enemy, and then that projectile is probably going to go get and hit this enemy. It's one projectile being generated per hit, and that one projectile is ricocheting on its own. So as you can see, ricocheting back and forth. That was only one projectile. Look how much damage it did, right? Very simple. One projectile going back and forth between enemies didn't do a lot of damage. Now, there was no indiscriminate there. Nothing crazy happened. Just what you would expect. Watch what happens when I put on action skill end anointments. So let's say we're shooting fire. So we're going to do corrosive and we're going to do shock. Pretty simple. I'm going to phase grasp and watch what happens. So we procced our anointments. You can already see the difference. Look at all those projectiles, dude. This is why the recursion is doing such crazy damage and why it is murking every enemy in the game, any content in the game, anything you want to do. The projectile recursion currently wrecks. It is so good. It's especially good on Amara because you can boost it with indiscriminate and you have a lot of benefits to elemental damage and you have sustainment to keep you alive and a lot of cool things going for Amara, especially the driver with elemental projector. But the recursion on its own with no anointments is doing crazy damage, or no anointments on the gun. These are just my bonus action skill damage. The bonus action skill damage for you guys that are like kind of not understanding what's going on are basically, from what I understand of it, are registering as a different hit. So our projectile is hitting, and that projectile is registering as an elemental damage, and that projectile is ricocheting. But we're doing bonus damage with different elements, and those bonus damages with the different elements are sending their own projectiles. And then that projectile is going to go hit other enemies and trigger the different elemental effects, and it just cascades into this crazy amount of damage. Watch what happens to these enemies. Like, we just Thanos enemies. We just delete enemies off the face of the earth. It's crazy. And this is with no points into indiscriminate. This is why I'm saying that Gearbox doesn't understand what's going on, because they target it indiscriminate, but that isn't actually what happens. That's not why the recursion is working so well. Now, they did fix the recursion going through Wotan's shield, but the ricochets still go through Wotan's shield. You just can't shoot through the shield directly, but sometimes you can. It's a little weird. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and that is also because of these anointments. But for the Ricochet Witch, which we'll get into, sometimes it is more reliable to use something else than the recursion on that one phase where there is no opening in the shield. But as you can see, the recursion, it isn't indiscriminate that's making the recursion so good. That's why Ricochet Witch is still the best Amara build in the game, in my opinion. If you disagree, show me a better build that performs better on Mayhem 4, that performs better in the takedown. Not trying to be cocky, it's just unreal. Alright, so, and if you have any questions, make sure to leave a comment about this if you're confused, or join the Discord. I talk about all this stuff, we explain it on Twitch, we go over it in Discord, so if you are confused, just let me know. But it isn't our anointments on our recursion that's making it crazy. Now, if you were noticing, I was using just a single fire recursion here. The reason I use a recursion times 2, which I think is the best recursion, is because those projectiles are going to hit twice and then send even more projectiles and spawn even more additional projectiles, and it just gets absolutely crazy. That's why if you've used this build, you'll notice the lag that happens sometimes when you shoot this gun with anointments on your shield and grenade, because it will just nuke everything and projectiles will spawn like crazy. So there you have it. I hope that made sense. I hope I cleared that up for some people, but at the moment, the Ricochet Witch build still performs unbelievably well. If you guys were worried about it, you don't need to be. Alright, let's get into the changes to the build, and yeah, I'll do all that. Alright, so we're going to be updating the build here, but I'm not going to be going as in depth on the skills that are the same that were originally in the original Ricochet Witch build. If you haven't seen that video, it's an awesome video. Go check it up. There'll be a little thing over there, right over there in that corner. You go check that video out for the whole explanations. Today, just keep it on the shorter side. I'm just going to be explaining some of the changes and why I made them. So, Anima, Tempest haven't changed. We're picking up Dread here. I will talk about Infusion after this, but for the moment, we're still sticking with Steady Hands to Wildfire, Deep Well, Indiscriminate, of course, Sustainment, and Forceful Expression. Now, I did discover some new mechanics that work with these things, but I'm going to save them for another video. But there are some really cool things that we can do with some stuff to increase our damage even more, which is super awesome. But save them for another time, because there's already a lot going on here. So this tree here and this tree are still the same. They haven't changed. And they haven't, well, I guess Root to Rise, in the original build video, in the original build I had 5 points here, and I didn't have full helping hands. That's changed. The damage reduction that we can keep up, the only changes to this build that have really occurred is because when I first made the build video, I was using my action skill. Now I'm gearing this build to the strategy where you don't use your action skill. The reason I don't use my action skill, or I fake grasp as the community is calling it, is because we can keep up our movement speed all the time, we can keep up mindfulness all the time, we can keep up helping hands all the time, we can keep up our bonus action skill damages all the time. It's the downtime where you lose your speed and you lose your damage isn't worth it, in my opinion. We're still getting passive indiscriminate. And so the changes I've made to this build reflect the change that I'm not really... I've done runs where I use my action skill, I've done runs where I haven't used my action skill, and I found that fake grasping is just more efficient. If you don't like that, I would refer to the old build, but if you want to be the fastest and do the most damage and be the most efficient, this is what I recommend. So, this hasn't changed. What has changed is we're adding points into arms deal. And this is a decision. There's two things going on here. So I still like fast hands. Fast hands is still nice. It's going to give us reload speed, mode swap speed. If you have a projectile recursion with shock and corrosive, you can very, very quickly switch between shock and corrosive, which is really nice for running anything. But it's really nice if you just have a recursion. It doesn't need to be shock corrosive. To switch back and forth between them to optimize your damage. The weapon swap speed is really nice. This is all around a good skill. Now, we don't really need points in Violent Tapestry. So many things are going to be hitting things, and we're not using our action skill, so we don't need points into that because we're not using Ties That Bind. And Transcend doesn't proc off of fake grasping. We're not actually getting crit damage when we fake grasp. We're only getting crit damage when we are actually grasping an enemy. Just to be clear, when I say fake grasping, I mean like looking at the ground and purposely missing your action skill, which procs on action skill and anointments. So we don't need Transcend because we can't get it. We don't need cooldown. You can get reload speed. You can get reload speed here if you want it, and go like 2 points Violent Tapestry, 4 points Alacrity. That's an option. However, I prefer 5 out of 5 into arms deal. So the recursion doesn't say it does splash damage, and I didn't realize it did splash damage when I first made this build, but it does do splash damage. This splash damage plus 20%, not crucial. It's nice, but the splash damage reduction is nice on top of it, and it's going to boost our damage, and we're already doing crazy damage, and the more damage, the better. We already have a ton of survivability with how many times the recursion is going to be hitting enemies. Now we've got splash damage reduction on top of damage reduction on helping hands. You basically become unkillable. Now, This last point you can kind of put anywhere. Me personally, I would put it in Root to Rise or One with Nature, whatever you guys see fit. You can put it. Let's put it in. How much is this? 5, 8. Okay, well, we'll do Root to Rise. Give ourselves a little bit more health. Yeah, so that's the biggest change. We're only putting 3 points here to get this reload speed, mode swap speed, and that, and then we're boosting our damage with arms deal. We're not using our action skill, so we don't really need any of these points here. Now, a lot of people like the transformer setup where you inflict a shock dot. The shock dot is going to generate or keep your shield up. You're not going to lose any shield. It makes us even more tanky. It's super, super nice. I still really like doing this. That hasn't changed. Make sure when you're running this, if you can, to whatever action skill you're using, whatever you're proccing on yourself, you want to be using with the same mode that you're shooting for the most part. Cool. Alright. It's back. So I really like using the transformer with the shock dot. A lot of people were confused by that because they're like, hey Moxsy, how are you getting 25 stacks of mindfulness? In order to get 25 stacks of mindfulness on a transformer using shock, you need, this is not compromisable, you need fit an action skill and bonus damage on your transformer, and you need bonus damage on your grenade. Without that, you won't get 25 stacks. If you just have one on your grenade, you'll get 15. If you don't have any on either, you won't get any stacks. So getting 25 stacks is more important than using a transformer. Now, you don't need to use shock. If I use a transformer with corrosive, you're going to get 25 stacks. Getting 25 stacks with the transformer with shock damage is not necessary. In the run that I was in the gameplay in the beginning, I was using corrosive as my action skill. It still works really well, guys. Shock is better, but if you can't get the anointments on a transformer, don't sweat it. Honestly, it's nice to have, but it isn't required. It isn't necessary. You're going to be killing things so fast that they won't even get a chance to shoot at you. So genuinely, look for this if you can get it. But if you can't get it, use a different shield with bonus damage on it, or use a transformer with not a shock dot. The most important thing here is being able to get 25 stacks of mindfulness. Mindfulness is giving us our movement speed and our damage. Do not compromise your damage and your movement speed for wearing a transformer with a shock dot. It's not worth it. So yeah. Lastly, so real quick mechanic-wise thing. So these bonus elements do not stack. You want to have different elements here, and you want to be shooting with a different element than on your shield. I found that if you want to get the most projectiles spawning, that you shouldn't match any of these elements. So I'm shooting shock for the most part. I have bonus corrosive, I have bonus incendiary. It's fine if they overlap a little bit, but it is, in my opinion, the best to have non-matching anointments that you're shooting, that you have on your gun, and that you have on your thing for the most projectiles. Now, when I use a Cutsman, it doesn't matter. I'm getting bonus corrosive, it's not ricocheting. But I do use my recursion with shock for the most part. Lastly, if you spec into infusion, currently the way things are working is if you spec into infusion, you will get additional projectiles. The more elements that you're hitting with, the more projectiles that will spawn. However, I just kind of bothers me running infusion. I don't like it. If you guys want to spec into it, you just need 1 point and you'll get a bonus projectile. But with the recursion, I wasn't seeing any bonus projectiles when we were using infusion. We scienced it. We went into photo mode, and infusion or no infusion, not matching elements and matching elements, I wasn't noticing any bonus projectiles. But with guns like the King's Call, Queen's Call, those guns, if you spec infusion, you will notice bonus projectiles. So this is up to you. If you're going to go 5 out of 5 into infusion, don't put any points in steady hands or wildfire. Just go 5 out of 5 into infusion. And I would recommend getting infusion if you don't have a shock corrosive cutsman. If you don't have shock or you don't have corrosive. This is specifically for the takedown. If you have a fire one and you want to be doing shock damage, go ahead, spec into infusion. Me personally, I don't like it. It's kind of a hassle, and if I spec into infusion, I have to use an action skill element that I'm not using. So I would use like fire basically, and if I'm using fire on my spooling projectile recursion, I'm not boosting the damage of the recursion at all. I'm only boosting the damage of this 50% bonus, and I want to be inflicting a dot to myself that matches my gun that I'm using so that I can do the most damage with that gun because I'm matching with an elemental projector. Alright, that is it for the video, guys. If you appreciate the video, if you appreciate the breakdown, make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. It helps me out a lot. I appreciate it a lot. I have the Google statistics. I see that like 80% of people that watch my videos aren't subscribed, so make sure to hit that subscribe button if you think I deserve it, man. Appreciate it a lot. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace!